You know, every single night I come out here to do work. When I leave, my girlfriend always says, please don't stay out late. So last night I stayed in. I was a good boy, stayed in. I didn't go to bed until about 2:30 last night. So Miss Stippling and I are going to have a talk about if she wants me going to bed at a decent hour, she's got to let me come out here. Yeah, I last night I stayed home. I wasn't on the show Don Draws the Studio, but I was in the chat, and while they were drawing, I was drawing myself. And the topic was like everybody was like some people were doing Cyberfrog, but apparently the topic was, or the choice was, something green. A green superhero. They have to have the word green in it. Something like that. I did the Heap, and so I was working on it while the show was going on, and twice during the show, I sent a DM to Don so he could see the progress I was making. So when the show was over, I just kept working on it because I didn't start at the same time as everybody else. They'd all been working for almost an hour when I joined when I started following when I turned on the stream. So I was behind. So I just kept working on it, and finally at 2:30 in the morning, I was done, and I went to bed. So I found that very funny that the nights that I go out and I come here to the bar to get work done, I go home at a decent hour. But yet, on a night when I stay home, I don't go to bed at a decent hour. I just get zoned into what I'm doing, and next thing I know, it's the middle of the night, and it's like, oh, I need to go to bed. Ooh, because honestly, when I got done doing the Heat, I was like in the zone. I was like, okay, let's start working on something else, and then I just realized what time it was. Like, oh shit, time to go to bed. So, but here is. Let me just clean off my nib. I'm gonna show you. I finished it last night. I did post it on Twitter, and I tagged the other members I knew of that were on the stream. So here is the Heap. So I did the Heap, and you can see how I just threw everything at it, so he looks like he's coming straight out of the swamp. Got a whole bunch of lily pads on this arm, some like some vegetation that you'd find under the water, mushrooms. I got a little bird's nest, and just even I have a fish lure hanging off of his finger, and then of course all the drips because he pulled his hand out, and mushrooms and fern. Just had fun with it. So I posted that on Twitter for y'all to see. This is a photocopy, but had fun doing it. Had fun doing it. So once I got done watching, when we got done with the show, and I wanted to finish, I looked up and I listened to Aldos with his Friday night show, The Gutter. And what he did last night, or Friday night, which I listened to last night, was he did a review of Golden Age. Now, Golden Age is a great book. I love it a lot. But I love it for different reasons than him. Um, First and foremost, I did not see any similarities when I read it, and even still now, to The Watchmen. I just don't see it. Um, for me, and for how I'm going to do this video is this. Okay, um, my notes that I took talk about it today. I took them while I was listening to the show. So if you go back at this point, hit pause, go watch The Gutter with Aldous, and then once you're done, you can listen to me as I talk, and my talking points mirror the topic at the time when they're talking on the show. Okay? So, first and foremost, Aldous does a great intro for the show for this for telling you about what the book is going to be is, and basically it's a post World War II book, and he does the lead up how like America's transition in the time of transition from war to peace, and uh, the soldiers, in this case the superheroes, are retiring into civilian life, and how some are having trouble, but yet it's a time of cynicism, and uh, so he just does a great job. In fact, if I wanted someone to do let's say I did Scat Investigators, I wanted one page, the first page, to be an intro of what this comic book is going to be about. I would want Aldous to uh, do the opening for it. So, but so when I go through and as I interject my opinion, it is as if I was on the show and I'm commenting at that moment when he's talking about something. So that's the reason why it comes out the way it does. Okay. So, uh, right off the bat, okay, um, he says how the book is a slog, and if you don't know the JSA uh, members, it's hard to follow along. Me, I'm a huge fan of the Justice Society of America. More importantly, I am a huge, and I mean absolute huge fan of the All Star Squadron. Big time. And I would say not necessarily the Justice Society, but you really got to be a fan of the All Star Squadron to really uh, follow this book, okay, without any explanation for anything. And I didn't. I didn't need. I followed along when I read it back then, and when he was talking about it, I could follow along very easily because I was such a fan. In fact, this book, in my opinion, is the epilogue to the All Star Squadron that we never got. Okay, the reason why I say that is they canceled the book right after Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they replaced it with Young All Stars. And Young All Stars was canceled because of low book sales after about, I would say after issue 14 is when it kind of started to fall apart. The problem with All Star Squadron is you were never given an ending, and the ending of the All Star Squadron is the end of World War II. The whole point of All Star Squadron being formed was it was by like executive order by Roosevelt for the heroes to fight against the saboteurs, German and Italian saboteurs on the home front, along with keeping morale up. And that's the reason why the heroes didn't necessarily go over to Germany. And the final, in my opinion, the very final issue of the All Star Squadron, the very final page. Remember how in World War II, after they won, there's that ticker tape parade in New York City. And there's that iconic image of that U.S. sailor uh, bending the nurse over and giving her a big kiss. Okay, that is the final image of the All Star Squadron of Johnny Quick kissing Liberty Bell. That, in my opinion, is the final image we should have gotten. We never did get it because they canceled the book. So for me, I look at it that way. So this whole Golden Age miniseries, for me, it was the epilogue to the All Star Squadron that we never got. Okay, so that's how I look at it. That's one of the reasons why I can follow along with all how like Johnny Law, and how I was able to follow along with him so quickly, and how he became an alcoholic with writer's block, and all the other different characters like uh, our man continuing to fight crime, fight, and how he was a drug addict. That was an ongoing thing. That's always been an ongoing thing with our man since I was first introduced to him. Was he's always fought this addiction with uh, with his pills that gives him 1 hour of strength every 24 hours. Okay. Um, so I just, again, the way they start the book off with giving you snippets of these characters adopting back to uh, civilian life and how some of them are having trouble. I loved it. I loved it. And that's the reason why uh, uh, the Manhunter, the blue faced, red costumed Manhunter. That's the reason why it kind of works at the very beginning until you get the big reveal. Is in many ways I looked at where it's like he's being hunted, but on top of that, I viewed it as him suffering PTSD from fighting in World War II and using uh, Tex Thompson, and Manhunter were perfect characters to use in this story because they were almost not used at all in All Star Squadron. So you didn't have to worry about people going, well, that's not how Johnny Quick would act, and that's not how this character would act. I mean, they used two characters that we knew were part of the All Star Squadron, but they never did. Roy Thompson never utilized them in any stories. So I found it perfect, the perfect characters. But again, I was one of those where it's like I wanted to see all of the All Stars and how they're adapting to civilian life. So, um, but again, I know at the very end they talked about how you could have eliminated like half these characters, and you didn't really need to know anything about them. They were frivolous to the story itself. Here's my thing: is that if they'd done the story of just Tex Thompson and Manhunter, and they don't have any of these other characters, okay, the book wouldn't have sold. The whole point of for me was you have to show all of those all-star squadron characters so you can understand where the superhero community was coming from and what they were going through. And so that's what made it the importance of having all the characters. I would go one step further. They were talking about how like Hawkman was almost like a throwaway character, and you didn't. I would have seen you didn't really need Hawkman in it at all until the final fight scene. I would have replaced uh, Hawkman with Doctor Occult, and I would have used him as the hypnotizing the black uh, the Manhunter to find out what he knew. That would have brought more of the mystic aspect into it, along with because the mystic aspect because as those guys he got the one thing he didn't get right was he was saying how like there was a superhuman in Germany who would defeat the superpowered heroes if they went into Germany. That isn't the case at all. The reason why what it was is Roy Thompson, he didn't want, because Superman or Green Lantern or Starman, they could have very easily gone over to Germany and defeated the little corporal on their own. Uh, they had Roy Thompson said he needed a means to keep them on the home front. How do you keep them off the battlefield and making it completely one-sided? And what he came up with, which I thought was brilliant, was Hitler had the Spear of Destiny. Spear of Destiny is the spear that killed Jesus Christ on the cross. Well, it had mystic abilities. And one of those mystic abilities was if anyone of superhuman abilities went into Germany, they would become under the control of the little corporal and the Spear of Destiny. That's the reason why you couldn't have superheroes on the battlefront. You could have mystery men on the battlefront. And that's the reason why Tex Thompson and the Manhunter were ideal characters to use in this story because they didn't have any special abilities. And so the Spear of Destiny was a great means to keep the heroes on the home front. And so uh, I found that to be very important to the mythos of the All Star Squadron, along with obviously it wasn't really addressed in the Golden Age story, but yeah, it was the Spear of Destiny is what kept the superheroes out of Germany. So, but no, I just it those two characters were for me. They would have been like throwaway characters in uh, in the All Star Squadron, which made them the perfect characters to use for Golden Age. And then uh, let's see here. When I thought that books 1 and 2, because I was such a huge fan of the All Star Squadron, because I was such a fan, books 1 and 2 are loaded with member berries of showing you all of these different All Star Squadron members, which again, a book just about Tex Thompson and uh, let's put this way. Let's say you reduce the cast of characters to like 5, which you could have. Okay, you could have. Aldous was right. You could have. The problem was, though, is it wouldn't have sold. It wouldn't have been the hit that it was. What made this book such a hit was the fact that they had so many of the All Star Squadron members. And like I said, even though Liberty Bell really isn't important to the book, it's important to show her because you get the sense of understanding of how these characters are adapting to civilian life and how some of them can't handle it. And obviously, wartime relationships and peace just aren't working. So, having so many different characters in the first 2 books, in book 1 and partially in book 2, was important. It was very important to me, and I thought they did a great job. Then, of course, we go into. I gotta turn this. Sorry, guys. With the yeah. So then we get into book 3 and book 4. Uh, in and I the thing also was when they get into uh, Tex Thompson, how he becomes uh, uh, a congressman. I looked at him as they were using him instead of Joe McCarthy. They were using Tex Thompson, and that's the reason why he was creating the superhero team and all American anti-communism, that anti like superheroes or lawlessness, if you will, because they're secret identities and they don't. And they're all they want is like they serve no purpose. Okay, in how he's presenting it. I thought that was perfect because like they had instead of having McCarthy, they used Tex Thompson, which is good because you're keeping it within the comic books. So you would almost have like uh, Tex Thompson is a stand-in for McCarthy, and then of course we discover at the end of book 3 that Dynaman is actually the little corporal, and the little corporal has uh, his brain is in Dynaman's body. And then when we get to the final fight, again, uh, they reveal that, like Miss Liberty, she reveals uh, that Tex Thompson is the Ultra Humanite, and then is immediately killed by Robot Man. And I thought the sequence worked great. She's there at the podium. She's making the announcement to let everybody know. All the superheroes are there, and she's immediately killed as Our Man is jumping in to stop Robot Man, and he's not there in time. Which, in a story like this, it works because again, it's not Liberty Bell who's standing at the podium, who's the leader of the All Star Squadron. You have basically Miss America, or Lady Liberty. She's pretty much like the stand-in for Libby Bell, Liberty Bell, and Our Man gets there and it gets there too late. She's killed, but that's the catalyst at that point that the heroes realize what is happening, that they're being duped, and now they're going to fight uh, Dynaman. And beautiful, beautiful and it showed how like he was so powerful that it was hard for the characters to defeat him. So and you think about it, what's the reveal? The reveal is the two biggest villains in this story were the two biggest villains in the All Star Squadron. The biggest story arc that they ever had in the All Star Squadron was against the Ultra Humanite. It's a story that they create that Jerry Ordway and Roy Thomas created the Amazing Man. At the end of the story, uh, the Atom has to fight Cyclotron, who has atomic powers, and it gives the Atom superhuman abilities, which he develops later on afterwards, and they establish that in JLA crossovers and in the beginning of the Infinity Incorporated. Okay, and so and like I said, this whole story, in my opinion, is just the perfect epilogue for the All Star Squadron, and it ends with them defeating both both Tex Thompson, the Ultra Humanite, and the little corporal who's Dynaman. And the most important thing is not only do we have a conclusion, an epilogue to the All Star Squadron, remember I said the final image of the All Star Squadron should have been Johnny kissing Liberty Bell. Okay, we didn't get it, but this whole this whole story is the perfect epilogue for the All Star Squadron and what they represented and what their purpose was in the time of war. And it's like they had one final battle to fight. So, and then of course, at the very end of this book, and Aldous didn't bring this up. The final image of this book is a prologue for the modern superhero era. And that is the important thing, is that, in my opinion, even though it's listed as an Elseworlds tale, this Golden Age 4-issue series is the perfect epilogue for the All-Star Squadron series, along with the DC. Instead of having McCarthy come in and JLA goes, we will disband because we are not going to reveal who we are. We have a grand fight, and they go out in style, doing what they were meant to do. And then the final page, the final image, is showing all of these characters who have become the modern era of superheroes. So that's that's how I feel about this about this 4-issue miniseries. Um, I don't really have any. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying really a whole lot of negative things about Aldous. I'm giving my input as if I was on the show with him. Now, to stand behind everything I'm saying, okay, is I'm going to show you a drawing I did, which is my interpretation of uh, what would have happened to the All Star Squadron in the 50s. Okay, I did this page in, I want to say, let's pull this back. Okay, I did this in, I want to say, 2018, 2019. This is my rendition of the 80s. Oh, I'm sorry, of the 50s. Okay, uh, we're going into the atomic era. So we've got the nuclear bomb, and we've got cosmic characters here. We have the atom and cyclotron there to be associated with it. But more important, we've got the missile, and I gave it the paint scheme of the bullet. Remember the human bullet or bullet man? That's why I used the color scheme on that missile. And then I looked at it, and you've got McCarthy. And I looked at it this way, okay? The whole concept of JLA disbands, I found to be absolute bullshit. First of all, it wasn't just the JLA; it was literally an army of the All Star Squadron, an army of mystery men. We are going to have some mystery men that say no. We don't want to reveal our identity, but we still want to fight crime. They become true vigilantes. That's this side. But then you would also have your mystery men who believe in America, and they, well, you know what? We will reveal our identities to the head of the FBI and to the president. So they're the only two people that know who we are, and our identities are protected as if we were undercover operatives or agents of the FBI. And that's how I looked at it with your two factors here. And then, of course, I wanted to have going into the era. So we got Robot Man. We got the first generation of Robot Man, the female mannequin who came back from the future, Red Tornado, GI Robot, and then, of course, I had the Kremlin here with this is the Korean Peninsula leading into that. And then, of course, we have the the Guardian. Remember, he was a beat cop. So I put him as kind of a beat cop with still having his mask and his shield with his badge. And then here we've got the Crimson Avenger. And then these are all the characters. And you can see where I have Marlon, Mr. Terrific is kind of dressed up like Marlon Brando from the Wild Ones. Okay. And then, of course, now I originally, I remember when I first used that idea, I put the helm, I used a ball cap, not a ball cap, but a hat, which was reminiscent of the Flying Tigers. And my idea was that John Law was a flying tiger. So I thought he looked cool in his costume, but he had the Flying Tigers hat and the Flying Tigers flight jacket over top his costume. I thought that was a cool idea. But because I had already used that in another image, I didn't want to overuse it. That's why I used Mr. Terrific. But no, I I just used like this is the Manhunter. This is the other Manhunter. That was the Blue Beetle. That was Airwave, and that was Mr. America with Stripe C and Star Spangled Kid. So that's how I looked at it, as you would have. I looked at it as like if you had McCarthy saying, you need to reveal ourselves, we need to reveal yourselves to the American public, you would have had some that would have been like, no, fuck you, we're going to go, we're going to continue to fight evil, but we're going to be doing that on our own terms. And if you want to, if we're going to be pursued by the law while we fight crime, so be it. And then you have the other heroes mystery men who were like, hey, we do believe in America, we do believe in what's going on, and they would basically become G-men, super mystery men, G-men. So that's how I interpret it. So that was my interpretation of the conclusion of the All-Star Squadron. And then, of course, I started it a long time ago, never finished it. I did have a 2-page spread of the 60s with another version of different characters. So, but that's how so you guys understand how it's like why I am such a fan of the All-Star Squadron and why I had such input on Aldis's review of Golden Age. So, guys, obviously, I'm having a great day having done that review with you guys. Would have loved to have been on the show with Aldous, but I was here working. So, even though the DJ sucked, I had a good time. So, guys, you have a great day. I'm having a great day. And remember, life is stressful. Take it all one dot at a time.